to the next point. We should ensure whatever we say is clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello, learners. Welcome to another segment of e-learning. I am Mrs. Chinyo, and I will be taking government for senior secondary school. Our topic today is Delegated Legislation 1, because the topic is broken down into two. In this segment, we are going to discuss the following. 1. Definition of delegated legislation. 2. Types of delegated legislation. 3. Merits or importance of delegated legislation. Now, before we look at the definition, if you remember in one of our lessons, we discussed the 3 arms of government, one of which is the legislative arm of government, where we said the primary responsibility of the legislative arm is to make laws. Now, today's lesson is related to that arm of government in the sense that our lesson will focus on law making. Now, for the purpose of clearer understanding, what do we mean by delegate? When you hear the phrase delegate, it simply means to assign or give authority to somebody to act on your behalf. That is the meaning of what? Delegate. Now, in today's lesson related to delegate, you will see the topic saying delegated legislation, meaning a situation has arisen whereby lawmaking has been assigned to somebody other than the organ responsible for lawmaking constitutionally. Now, follow me keenly and you follow the lesson. You will understand the lesson. Definition of delegated legislation. By way of definition, I said this can be defined as the laws made by persons or bodies who receive authority from the parliament to do so. Laws made by persons or bodies who receive authority from the parliament to do so. Let's go further. You may also wish to define delegated legislation as laws made by some persons or bodies other than parliament, but with the permission of the parliament. That's another perspective. Learners, I want you to note that parliament, that is the legislature, make what we call parent laws. That is the enabling act which serves as the structure or foundation on which other related laws can be derived or built on. It is the primary responsibility of the lawmakers to provide the basis upon which any other law could be built upon. Having said that, I also want to mention that delegated legislation must therefore or thus come out from the enabling act. Otherwise, it will become unconstitutional. Basically, delegated legislation are detailed laws to help in the smooth running of an institution or organization for which the delegated legislation is made. And such laws are made by other bodies and not the parliament. The following examples will show you. Types of delegated legislation. That is to say, we have various types of delegated legislation. For the purpose of this lesson, we categorize, or we are going to look at 3 types. Starting with 1, what we call orders in council. Orders in council. I want to use the United Kingdom as example 1 of orders in council. The Queen and the Privy Council. What is the Privy Council? The Privy Council is made up of the Queen herself, the Prime Minister, and other leading members of government. Now, this Privy Council constitutionally or are mandated to make laws. That is, they have authority to make orders or to make law. That is an example of what? Order in council. This kind of orders allow the government to make laws without going through parliamentary procedures. It is very good because of emergencies. The parliament need not be summoned, but the Queen and the Privy Council will meet and take a decision or make laws. Now, the second type of delegated legislation is what we call statutory instruments. Statutory instruments. What are these? These are rules and regulations made by governments. That is, authority is given to heads of these ministries, departments, agencies, which I call MDAs, to make regulations for their area of responsibility. That is, constitutionally, MDAs are mandated or have the power to do what? To make laws for their area of responsibility. For example, I want to give you an example of statutory instruments. Example number 1. Starting with the Ministry of Education. In the Ministry of Education, for instance, it is the ministry that legislates, that is, make law on the establishment, siting, that is, location of schools. It is the ministry that decides on the contents of the learning curriculum, the number of weeks per term, the nature of uniform to be used by the learners, learner's guide, conduct, and teachers to learners' relationship while they are in school, to mention but a few. It is the Ministry of Education that has the authority to make laws concerning this area. It is not the legislature that will do it. Example number 2. A minister, for example, in charge of the Ministry of Transportation can regulate or legislate, make laws on areas of road transport or road traffic, for example. He decides whether, if there are toll gates, how much vehicles will pay, for instance, among other things. Example number 3, if you take the Ministry of Justice, for instance, the Minister of Justice has the constitutional mandate to regulate on how Judicial Commission can appoint or dismiss judges. It is not the lawmakers that will make such detailed laws, but the ministry has the mandate to go down and look at those details and formulate the laws. We are looking at types of delegated legislation. Number 3 now is what we call bylaws. What are bylaws? These are regulations made by particular local governments as it affects them. For instance, local governments can make laws or can legislate on street naming, how to name the streets, markets or market control, mode of tax collection, registering births and deaths, among other things. Bylaws are also made by public businesses, that is public corporation. For instance, example of public corporations or public businesses, we have Water Board, Railway Corporation, Ports Authority, among others. These public corporations or businesses have parliamentary authority to make laws that will guide the conduct or behavior of the public while in their premises or using their facilities. For instance, the ministry or minister of transport can legislate on smoking when passengers or the public are using their facilities. They can legislate on services or charges to be paid by those that receive services from them or by those that enjoy their services. It is the ministry that will make these little laws and not the legislature, whose primary duty we know is to make laws. Having looked at types of delegated legislation, now we'll quickly look at merits or importance of delegated legislation. Merits or importance of delegated legislation. Now, delegated legislation is important or has a number of advantages or merits. These include some of the following. 1. Parliament does not have the time to consider and debate every small detail as inherent or characterized with complex regulations. Parliament is too busy. They do not have enough time to look at the details involved in the day-to-day running. For instance, you cannot expect the National Assembly to sit down and make law on how much passengers should pay if they want to travel by rail, for instance. It will be too cumbersome. Therefore, when it is delegated out to the specific area of operation, it is an advantage. But when delegated out, like I said, minute details that will enhance smooth running of institutions, corporations, or MDAs in general, it will save time and it will bring efficiency in the day-to-day administration. Number 2, the Parliament may not have the necessary expertise or knowledge required in all areas of operations. Therefore, it is better for parliamentarians to debate on the main principle, that is the enabling law, thoroughly, but delegate the details for those in the specific areas of operation. Now, this is simply a situation whereby the lawmakers themselves know that they are not experts in areas of operation. Therefore, they will just provide the basis or the foundation, that is the enabling law or act. Then they leave the MDAs to go and make detailed, minute, small aspects that will enhance the smooth running of their MDAs. For example, if such delegations are given, ministers in charge or ministries or managers of corporations can have the benefits of further consultation on the laws before regulations are made. This will actually result to a workable or suitable regulations for their ministries or their businesses. Number 3, the process of passing an act of parliament can take a long time, even in an emergency situation, because there are many processes involved. But delegated laws can bypass or be passed very quickly, and it can be amended and revoked also very easily, thereby saving time and providing quick action in case of emergency situations. Learners, I want you to note that delegated legislation are important because laws can quickly be made to address challenges that emerged in the course of administration of MDAs or in the running of businesses. Delegated legislation helps to take off some workload off the shoulders of legislators. Another point, delegated legislation is useful in emergency situations. For instance, in case of external attacks or anarchy in a given sector of the country, the chief executive officer can take swift decision on the situation. Learners, so far, we've looked at the meaning of delegated legislation, types of delegated legislation, and the merits of delegated legislation. Before I step out, I will leave you with the following assignments to keep you busy. Number 1, what is delegated legislation? 2, list 3 types of delegated legislation. Number 3, state 3 importance of delegated legislation. I take the assignment again. 1, what is delegated legislation? 2, list 3 types of delegated legislation. Number 3, state 3 importance of delegated legislation. When you are done with the assignment, submit it to this number 08104 742 I take the number again, 08104 742 I remain Mrs. Chinyo Juliana Tianhua. Thank you. See you in the next lesson.